It's Tuesday morning, November 10th, 2020, and I'm near Hays, Kansas, traveling eastbound on Interstate 70. I'm heading back to Pennsylvania. First and foremost to visit family, but I also want to stop at my storage unit and manage some of my gear, and I'm going to drop the Jeep off at OK Four-Wheel Drive in New Jersey for about a week. Mainly for some tender loving care. I've been hard on the Jeep this past summer, but for all intents and purposes, it's held up great. When I established a few weeks ago that I'd be driving east, I thought to myself, alright, what am I going to do for a video this week that I'm spending predominantly on the highway? So we had the idea to have a cross-country Q&A. Since I'm just going to be driving for the next few days, staring out the windshield past my steering wheel, I figured it'd be a good time to answer any questions and talk about venture forward or mobile lifestyle. Alright, first question. Do I have plans to replace the Jeep with a larger vehicle? And that's a great question because that has been on my mind a lot over the past couple of years. It's no secret that I crave more space and greater creature comforts. I've been living in the Jeep, an SUV, for almost 4 years now. And what I absolutely love about it is how it's a high mobility living platform that I can drive high into the mountains, into places where few other vehicles can go, and I can set up a very comfortable vehicle-supported camp there. I absolutely love the compact mobility of this platform, and I have a feeling that if I ever replaced the Jeep with something larger, that I would be frustrated and regret it the moment that I stumble upon a track that I couldn't get my vehicle down. I do want to keep this open-ended because you never know what the future holds. But as of right now, in November 2020, I plan to keep this orange Jeep and just keep it running for as long as I can. All that being said, while I have no plans to replace the Jeep or to stop traveling in it, I am leaning towards supplementing the Jeep with a larger, more comfortable vehicle. You know in Knight Rider how Michael Knight goes off and solves mysteries and fights crime, and then at the end of the episode he drives back to the Knight Industries tractor trailer, which is pretty much a mobile HQ. And then Bonnie does that wand thing over Kit and Michael jams with Devin Miles. That's sort of the direction that I want Venture Forward to go with this whole arrangement. Next question, what are my thoughts on new and forthcoming electric vehicles that are geared toward off-roading? I'm excited. I'm not a purist in any way when it comes to automotive technology. I am very much a geek, and when something shiny and new and high-tech comes to market, I love to read all about it and learn all about it, and I like to see it when it becomes mainstream. There aren't any current offerings that I have my eye on now. I would love to try the Rivian. I'd love to experience these vehicles. But as far as backcountry adventure, I don't think the technology is there yet. We need the range, and I think more than anything we need the rechargeability. I'm absolutely not an engineer, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but from what I've heard, consumer solar solutions don't deliver enough power to effectively charge a modern car in a reasonable time frame. But when solar solutions are more powerful and the needs of an electric vehicle are less demanding, and maybe we can trickle charge our overland vehicles in the sun, then game on. Back on the subject of vans, the next question is, what % of your average week do you think you could accomplish with an all-wheel drive van? This goes back to my other point that I absolutely love the compact, high mobility of the Jeep Wrangler camper. But Venture Forward to me is not about four-wheeling. It's about exploring the road less traveled. And as it happens, a lot of the less traveled roads demand four-wheel drive and a high-clearance vehicle. So when I go out during the week, I purposefully look for roads that are well-suited to the Jeep. During the average week, I would say an all-wheel drive van would be capable of about 65% of the backcountry routes that I see. The rain just picked up, so I apologize if that's making too much noise on here. with all that being said, you can still have a robust adventure without traveling down these narrow technical forest roads. If you have an all-wheel drive van, there are still plenty of backcountry roads to explore and experiences to be had that are appropriate for that platform. And that's true for absolutely any vehicle. Don't stay home and choose to not go exploring, to not go on adventure, because you don't have a lifted vehicle and big tires. How does the weight of my Jeep stack up against the factory gross vehicle weight? Well, I had to Google it, and the gross vehicle weight rating for the Jeep Wrangler Unlimited is between 5,400 and 5,700 pounds. Now, it's been a while since I've weighed my Jeep, over a year, but not too much has changed. There's no way to sugarcoat it. My Jeep is heavily laden, and that's even without aftermarket bumpers, no up armor or anything like that. I don't notice any significant consequence from being over GVWR. It could benefit from a little bit more stopping power. The power under the hood has been adequate. My suspension is good, but it's not heavy duty, and I suspect that it has settled a bit over the past few years. Structurally, the Jeep is sound, the chassis is holding together, and it feels quite comfortable and capable off-road without bottoming out. I'd prefer if the Jeep were more robustly engineered to facilitate a camper conversion, but it's not something I lose sleep over or even think about. I wouldn't want to make it too much heavier, but I feel like the Jeep manages pretty well. The question is, would I consider 37-inch tires, or am I completely happy with 35-inch tires like what I have now? I am very happy with 35-inch tires and 3.5-inch lift. I feel like it really strikes a balance between practicality and off-road capability. I will never run 37-inch tires on this vehicle. I have never felt a need. That being said, if I were targeting popular four-wheel drive trails, like some of Moab's more difficult trails or the Rubicon Trail, I would absolutely consider 37-inch tires. Now, I have to admit that I'm talking about tire size in the context of the Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, and that's something that is going to vary from vehicle to vehicle. Smaller lift and tires have a more profound effect on a short wheelbase vehicle than something that's longer like a Wrangler Unlimited or a Gladiator. And something with a longer wheelbase like the Gladiator needs larger lift and tires to get the breakover angle, approach, and departure within the same specifications as a shorter wheelbase vehicle. I'm geeking out on tech stuff. That isn't my intent, but the point is, moderation is basically what I shoot for in terms of lift and tire size. Kind of do your best to strike that happy medium. I'm filling up in Greenville, Illinois, and I made it 556 miles on my factory and auxiliary gas tanks. Last time I filled up was in Hays, Kansas this morning. 556 miles of range total on both gas tanks. I think that might be a record. When I first got the auxiliary gas tank installed, I tracked it and I got about 520 miles. But I absolutely got 556 today. That's pleasing. I just put 32 gallons in at Love's, and of course the fill-ups are costly, but they last pretty much all day. I'm only going to need to fill up once or twice more between here and eastern Pennsylvania. Alright, so last night I spent the night at a rest stop in Kansas, and tonight I'm in a discreet gravel parking lot just off the interstate. It's not ideal, but there's two trucks right over there, and this looks like the type of place that people stop to get some shut-eye when they're traveling along I-70. Good morning. It is Wednesday morning, November 11th, on I-70 eastbound, somewhere in Illinois. Why did I go back to the stock plastic bumper on the front of the Jeep as opposed to keeping the aluminum Pronghorn bumper that I had equipped through 2018? The Pronghorn bumper was fine. It was very beefy, and most notably, it was light in its construction, which is ideal. However, when I made plans to get the winch on the front of the Jeep, which is a come-up winch with an integrated solenoid, I wasn't 100% sure if there would be a mounting solution that would work with the Pronghorn bumper. And that was a very loose uncertainty too. I just figured it'd be easiest to go with what I know would work. And that was the factory front bumper with a mounting plate. While nobody asked for it back, the Pronghorn front bumper wasn't mine. It was a part of OK 4-Wheel Drive's inventory. And I figured with the winch install coming up, it was a good time to switch it out and return it to them. What Jeep modifications have I performed that I wish that I did sooner? When I first got this Jeep 5 years ago now, the first things that I did were the Ursa Minor J30 pop-up camper, the Genesis dual battery kit, and that's pretty much it. But the one thing that I wish I had done sooner would have been the winch on the front of the Jeep. The winch isn't a silver bullet solution for every recovery situation, but it's as close to a get-out-of-jail-free card that you're going to get when things go sideways. Somehow, I managed to travel throughout the North American backcountry for over 2 years without needing a winch, but I absolutely had some very close calls, and looking back, I feel like I got really lucky that I was able to self-extract those few times that I got into trouble. Now, preparedness is very important, but I do not think a winch is absolutely essential. Again, don't wait until you have certain equipment to start exploring. Just make sure that if you don't have that equipment, that you explore sensibly. You might put a winch on front of your vehicle and go for years without ever needing it, but all it takes is that one time. And that one time, it's probably going to be worth its weight in gold. Regarding the Long Range America auxiliary gas tank, how do I think it'll hold up for both overlanding and serious off-roading? I've had my Long Range America auxiliary gas tank installed for over a year now, and it's been from Labrador to LA and a lot of places in between. For overland travel, general exploration, and exploring public land, it'll hold up just fine. It'll take the occasional hit, and it will be no worse for wear. However, for recreational off-roading, particularly rock crawling, and if you like to play hard and you ride your belly a lot, I think it would probably get trashed pretty easily. The last time I was under the Jeep, I did notice a dent in my auxiliary gas tank. It's not bad at all, but it probably happened on one of the more technical routes I was on in Colorado. I won't hesitate to have that auxiliary gas tank down there for light four-wheeling, or even hardcore four-wheeling if you've got substantial lift and you very seldom come in contact with the ground. Have I had issues with the smell from trash in my Blue Ridge Overland Gear spare tire bag attracting pesky critters? I very rarely use my spare tire bag for trash, to be honest. I will if there's something very nasty that I don't want in the Jeep. But when I'm deep in the backcountry, particularly in places where there might be a lot of wildlife, I actively avoid putting trash in there for that very reason. I've never had a problem with critters being attracted to the spare tire bag, and I have never seen any evidence of attempted entry either. Right now it has my personal flotation device for my boat in it, and also a bunch of firewood. I store my personal trash inside the Jeep, and I cycle it out very often, pretty much every time I stop for gas. Although I haven't had any issues with critters, if you do have a spare tire trash bag, and I think it's a great solution, you should still put great care and consideration into when and where you use it for that. Have I considered shipping the Jeep for travel to another continent? Yes, I am very interested in doing that. In fact, last year, 2019, when I was exploring Atlantic Canada, I was thinking, all right, this trip is almost over. What should I plan for 2020? And I very strongly considered putting RNG in a container and sending it off somewhere. But I didn't feel like I was ready yet, and there's still so much to explore in the United States. Honestly, you could spend a lifetime here and not see everything. There's so much history and geography. And as you well know, it's probably for the better that I held off on that this year. However, as soon as world circumstances improve, intercontinental travel is something that I very much want to explore. What are my top 3 favorite regions or places that I have visited? This is probably one of the hardest questions. My favorite biome or geography would probably be the Pacific Northwest and the mountainous temperate rainforests. My favorite landscape for adventure and exploration is probably the southeastern corner of Utah, with its vast open spaces, sprawling rock formations, and chiseled canyons. My favorite experiences were Alaska's Inside Passage, just because of how exotic and beautiful it was. Quebec, Canada was the most intriguing. There was so much splendor there. There was so much to explore, especially farther to the north. The most exciting experience that I had, that I felt the most anticipation for, was taking the ferry to Newfoundland. When I got to Newfoundland, an exotic landscape unfolded that almost felt Scandinavian. It felt like I was really far from home, but I wasn't. Quebec and Newfoundland are very attainable destinations, particularly if you're located in the northeastern states. Why didn't I hike to the ghost trains in the North Maine woods? The answer to that is, quite honestly, I forgot. It was about a week after I went up into the North Maine woods and published that episode that I remembered, oh yeah, there were ghost trains, and these are rusty old locomotives that were abandoned in the middle of the woods. They were used for hauling lumber, I believe. But they're very much a backcountry oddity, and I knew about them before going into the North Maine woods. It completely slipped my mind. I know when I was up in the North Maine woods, I was very preoccupied with traversing it from south to north on what gas that I had, and that was a fairly large distance, and all I had was a spare 2-gallon Rotopacks. Although the ghost train thing stands out, this is true for almost any destination where I pass through and overlook a really interesting feature. The challenge is really logistics and my workflow. The only time that I'm online and my laptop is open is at the end of the week, on Friday and on Saturday when I'm editing video. And then when that's done, I close my laptop and I immediately go into the backcountry again to find a place to camp, out of cell service, and I'm offline just like that. So what almost never happens before I venture into a new area is planning or even just a little bit of research. And that's honestly something that I'd like to change, at least the research bit. I firmly believe in keeping a loose itinerary. So you go into an area and you see something that makes you curious and you explore it. You take the time to discover it. And since you have a loose itinerary, you don't need to be anywhere. So you can take all the time that you need. That's something that I want to keep. But I should have at least some semblance of knowledge before I venture into an area so I don't overlook unique and interesting places like that. last time I got a tire puncture was on the Trans-Labrador Highway in early fall of 2019. Since then, I've been up in the Northeast and have been down as far southwest as Los Angeles. And I haven't had any incidents with my tires despite being off pavement and aired down every single week. When do I get a screw in my tire? When I'm highway driving. It's always on highways. Leftover chicken on a 50-degree day under the engine cover for about an hour and a half. It was thoroughly heated. It was good. It probably could have benefited from another 30 to 60 minutes, but did the job nicely. Does talking to the camera help me feel less lonely and less isolated when I'm in the backcountry? Absolutely. Regularly talking to the camera is a fantastic way to help manage extended alone time. In fact, on a mind-numbing straight-through cross-country drive like this, it has been a saving grace. It's been going very quickly and it feels like you're right here with me. Has it become more difficult for me to keep creating content as years go by, or has it become a natural part of life? A little bit of both. It's become my routine. Monday through Thursday are all record experiences days. So on those days, the camera is always in my hand. That has become routine. And then on Friday and Saturday, I sit in front of the computer all day. And Sunday is usually downtime. But with a new video every single week, it's challenging keeping things fresh. Do they want to see me make coffee? Nah, they've already seen that. How about I make a sandwich? Make a sandwich? You've seen those things, and I only share those things not because I take pride in my cooking, but because I'm trying to convey the experience of mobile living. It's a part of the lifestyle. I feel a self-imposed urgency to share something new with you every week, so that's why I go from location to location in rapid succession, because I want to keep things fresh and keep things interesting. All that being said, I love it and I'm passionate about it. And when I'm out there exploring someplace new, I'm genuinely excited to be in that place. I lose myself in discovery, and then I try to pass that on to you. How long does it take for me to create and to edit a video? A typical episode of Venture Forward. I usually start recording experiences on Mondays, and Monday through Thursday, all day and night, my camera is always in hand. As time goes on, the video editing process gets longer and longer, not because the episode is changing at its core. I'm just spending more time on video quality, audio quality, and just the overall polish of the production. It's a natural evolution, because when I started recording Venture Forward, I did it all on my phone. And I pieced everything together on my phone using iMovie, saved it to a file, and pushed it to YouTube. It might have taken 20 minutes. However, nowadays, in 2020, with this episode being an exception, I usually record 5 hours of video every week, and it takes me about 20 hours to edit that down into a 20 to 30 minute episode of Venture Forward. So I start editing video on Friday morning, and at this point I'm trying to get the video out by midday on Saturday. What hardware and software do I use to edit and create an episode of Venture Forward? When I first started Venture Forward back in 2017, I didn't expect it to become a thing. So I used my iPhone exclusively to record video, and the iMovie app, which comes with my iPhone, to put an episode together and publish it to YouTube. After that, through most of 2019, I would use my 2012 model year 15-inch MacBook Pro. And on that computer, I started using iMovie, which is a video creation app that's free. It comes with the operating system. And then at the end of 2019, I switched to 2019 model year 13-inch MacBook Pro. I went down in model size. You might be thinking, Chris, you went down in computer size and you're editing video. I up-spec'd the MacBook Pro as much as I could, and I went with that particular model because of portability and for power demands. In terms of portability, it's easy to stow in the Jeep. I live in an SUV. And it was more efficient in terms of power demands. My 2012 MacBook Pro would constantly trip the factory inverter. It needed too much power. But with my 13-inch MacBook Pro, it easily runs off the Jeep's power that comes from the factory, and I can even plug it into USB for a little bit of extra juice. I will tell you though, if I had an HQ or a static location, I would absolutely get a more robust workstation. In 2018, I stopped using the free iMovie app, and I switched to Apple's Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro is a higher grade video editing software that's available on Apple's App Store. I am not brand loyal. There's Android and PC hardware that'll work just as well to achieve these same ends. I just personally prefer the Apple ecosystem. When I talk to the camera, do I use notes or have a script? And how often do I need to do retakes? I am absolutely horrible at talking to the camera. Every little break in the video when you see me talking to the camera is me trying to correct an error, whether it's wrong word usage, or I stutter, or I go off on a tangent, or I talk too long about something. My monologues are completely unscripted, and I'm constantly evaluating my word choice and everything as I'm talking. This real-time analyzing and evaluating what I'm saying, This real-time evaluating and analyzing what I'm saying to the camera causes me to trip over my words like crazy. The key is to not overthink it and to have a natural conversation with the camera, and I can't get that into my head. What really makes it easier for me is doing something manually while I'm talking to the camera. So less mental energy is spent on picking the right words. I'm preoccupied with, I don't know, it might be wrenching on the Jeep, or in this case, it's driving. 2 videos ago, the one that I wrapped up in Durango, Colorado, that wrap-up scene where I'm talking to the camera and say, thanks for following along, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It took me 40 minutes to record that, and I used, I think, less than a minute of the footage. So I'm not good at talking to the camera at all. I've gotten a little bit better. So I'm not good at talking to the camera at all. I have gotten a little bit better at it over the years, but not much. It's Wednesday night, and after a long day of driving, I went ahead and got a fee campsite tonight at Dillon State Park near Zanesville, Ohio. As you travel farther east, and I'm sure many of you can attest, finding a place for dispersed camping or just simply boondocking becomes more and more challenging, just because it's more developed and population density goes up. So I normally check Walmarts along the interstate. A lot of them have no overnight parking signs. Rest areas, truck stops, trailheads for hiking trails, and sometimes even random gravel parking lots, which is what I did last night. But this seems to be a really nice, well-groomed campground. There's a bunch of other people here, and it is still firmly fall in Ohio. There's leaves falling from the trees, and the temperature is fairly mild. Before I call it a night, let's do another question. Do I have any plans to get a drone? I would love to introduce a drone to my kit, and I've come close to getting one a few times now, but I keep holding off. The biggest reason that I'm holding off on a drone is workflow. Adventure Forward in terms of video production is a one-man band. I'm in front of the camera, I'm behind the camera, I'm doing all of the editing and publishing, and what I found is when I add equipment such as more cameras, The editing process takes longer because I have more memory cards to read from, I have input from more than one source, when the amount of time it's taking me to edit and release an episode every week is already escalating as is. I think with the addition of a drone, I'd be spread too thin across multiple devices, and I really want to just focus on being as good as I can be with this. It's Thursday morning, November 12th, and I'm eastbound on Interstate 70 in eastern Ohio. First question of the day. Where have I found the most beautiful starry night skies with the least light pollution? First of all, I need to preface this answer by saying that I don't stay out at night nearly often enough. I absolutely adore starry skies in the night sky, and I love star photography. It's challenging, a lot of trial and error involved in that, but when I capture a brilliant starscape in the Milky Way, that's extremely exciting to me. I would say the most impressive night skies would be in the deserts of the South and the Southwest. Big Bend in Texas is brilliant. I remember having some fond experiences in SoCal, in Arizona, and Nevada. An interesting question. Seems like I don't really get sick. What do I do to avoid getting sick? Since I've hit the road in the past 4 years, I have not been notably sick. Knock on wood, especially right now. I don't want to jinx myself. I don't know what the practical explanation is for that. Certainly, I'm not in a home or an office constantly surrounded by other people, but I am certainly going into coffee shops, libraries, and public places all the time. It might be luck, it might be physical activity, it's certainly not my diet. It might be just due to the fact that I'm constantly outside and exposed to fresh air. What do I consider the best motorized platform or style for full-time travel? The answer to this question is going to vary wildly from person to person. I don't think there is a best per se. I think there's what's right for you. For travel via motorcycle, you have the advantage of extreme portability. You can tuck yourself away on some remote tracks and find some really discreet, safe, and beautiful places that you can't access using any other vehicle. Of course, with motorcycle travel, you have greater exposure to the elements, and you have the setup and tear down of your shelter, whether it's a bedroll, swag, or a tent. Overland travel in a four-wheel drive vehicle is in the same vein as with a motorcycle, but you don't have that portability. Instead, you might have better shelter, more creature comforts. So that right there is your trade-off. If you travel in a van or an RV, you have more creature comforts, more convenience, but less mobility. In all three of these travel styles, you want to go with the one that inspires you the most. But no matter what that is, you want to make that experience as comfortable and convenient as possible. The more setup and tear down and shuffling of gear of your living arrangement every day, the more quickly you're going to fatigue. And the travel itself over time becomes more frustrating and tedious. An example of that I feel like I've got dialed in is the Ursa Minor J30 pop-up camper. And this Ursa Minor camper goes up in about 30 seconds and it goes down in about 1 minute every morning. So I wake up in the morning and I don't have any dread or reservations about closing the camper. I'm back on the road in a matter of minutes. That type of ease and convenience is worth its weight in gold. And when you simplify things to that extent, you'll be inspired to stay on the road for much longer. So to circle back to the original question, choose whichever travel platform inspires and excites you. But then go to great lengths to simplify, maximize comfort, and minimize inconvenience. When I encounter gates on public land, how do I know that they're passable and that they're not access points to someone's private property? First of all, gates are extremely common on public land out west. Ranchers are often given special permission to utilize that land for cattle grazing. So most of the time, that's exactly what the gate is there for, to manage cattle. My foremost recommendation would be to always have a map. Know when you're on public land and know exactly where the boundaries are. The best map for this is going to be an up-to-date National Forest or BLM map. But the next best thing is a public land layer on your GPS, like the one that's available on Gaia GPS. If the gate you encounter is within those boundaries and it's not either locked or marked private, then more often than not, it's fair game. You'll see on your GPS if that gate is adjacent to private land, and in some cases that might be an easement. But in other cases where I might have some doubt, then I just turn around and go a different way. 99% of the time, if a gate is private, it'll be marked as such or it'll be locked. Do I ever worry about my personal security while traveling and camping? Worry might be the wrong word. I used to worry. When I first hit the road in 2017, I probably worried for about a month. But then I got into a rhythm. I got accustomed to exploring and seeking out campsites, and worrying subsided fairly quickly. In almost 4 years on the road, consisting of mostly improvised camping, I have never had an incident where I've encountered an unsavory character or a group of people. Now that being said, not a day goes by that I don't consider my personal safety and security. Evaluating risk becomes a mental process that is always on. When you're picking out a campsite or exploring someplace new, you look at visual cues that give you hints as to how a region is trafficked. Signs of human activity, litter, vandalism can be unsettling, and if you ever feel unsettled or unsafe about a location, you simply move on and go to the next one without even second-guessing yourself. Either hide in plain sight and blend in with other recreational campers, or go so deep in the backcountry that it's statistically unlikely that you'll encounter someone else. The biggest strategy I have for mitigating worry is to always arrive during daylight, and use the extra daylight to acquaint yourself with the surrounding area within a quarter-mile radius. Know what's around you and know who's around you. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's not. It's really just a second nature routine. It's part of exploration and arming yourself with knowledge. Have I had any notable encounters or scary experiences with wildlife? I really wish I had a more exciting answer to this one, but the fact is, I feel like I see relatively little wildlife for as much time as I spend in the backcountry. I see deer all the time. I saw one grizzly bear in Montana. It was grazing in a pasture by the road, and a lot of motorists had stopped to take a picture of it. I haven't seen any black bears in well over a year, but I saw a bunch of them when I was up in Alaska and in British Columbia. In Smithers, British Columbia, a large black bear wandered fairly close to my camp, but it scurried away as soon as it got a whiff of me. I saw one rattlesnake ever. That was in Southern California in 2017, I think. I've never seen a scorpion in my life. When I was in Maine, I saw a bunch of moose. There was a decent concentration of moose in Maine. One mountain lion darted across the track in front of the Jeep in northern Nevada, but it was just a blur, and to this day I wonder if I actually saw it. Despite the infrequency of encounters, I always keep my bear spray ready when I'm hiking or camping in areas where it's a high risk. Honestly, the worst critters that I've had to contend with have been little gray mice. They've been really bad lately, and they find their way inside the Jeep when I'm camping at a place for only one night, sometimes 2 nights. I can't stand mice invasions. All right, it is an overcast Thursday afternoon in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at 3 o'clock p.m. on November 12th, 2020. I made it. I left Colorado around noon on Monday, and I got here to Lancaster around 1 p.m. today, Thursday. The question and answer format made the trip go quite fast for me because I spent a lot of time talking to the camera. In fact, I liked that, and I can foresee myself doing that again on a forthcoming cross-country trip. It was a ton more talking than I usually do in an episode, but I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. My first stop when I got into town was my storage unit because I wanted to rummage through some gear and also to clear out a lot of gear in the Jeep for this week, just so I can take it to the shop and none of my stuff gets in anyone's way. Now my son Cole gets home from school soon, so I'm going to take RNG over to his house and spend some quality time with him tonight. Speaking of spending time with family, that's what I'm going to devote all next week to. So the next video will be in 2 weeks instead of 1. The next video would normally be scheduled for Saturday, November 21st. Instead, I'm going to target Saturday, November 28th for the next episode of Venture Forward. As usual, thank you all for following along. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I will see you again in 2 weeks.